Am I live? Ha! Hello, I'm Scott Feinblatt, and I'm not just an actor in Outtake Reel, but I also made the damn thing. I'm the writer, producer, director, co-director actually, casting director. I did a lot of other stuff. I couldn't even list it all right now if I wanted to, but I guess it's safe to say that I had a fair hand in the production of this film. I co-directed it with my friend Jeffrey Chaffin, who could not be here with us today because I just invited him, and I guess we couldn't figure out how to patch him in, but he's listening, and we love him. So, hi Jeff. So that's who I am. Now, who are you? Yes. So, anyway, I'm sitting here for the camera and you guys, and if you've got any questions, I'm here to answer them. Tell you a little bit about the production, about indie filmmaking, no budget indie filmmaking, and you know. All right. So the first question is in, and it is, how long did it take to put the script together for this film? Well, first I took the tacks and I put it through the holes, and it, held it together pretty well. So I'd say about, a good 20 seconds or so. But if you're talking about the writing of the script, then that was a different story. The journey to make this film started actually in a writing class, a literature class actually. I was taking a horror literature class at Cal State Fullerton, and most of what we were studying was about how classic horror stories have these specific aspects to them that make them powerful and timeless. And so I began thinking about, what about all the torture porn and all these kind of really grody horror films that are out there that everybody's watching? How do they factor into the picture when we're considering all these, classical, timeless aspects? And so basically, I started pushing around the idea of, is it possible to include these types of elements in a story that's otherwise constructed using these kind of very subtle filmmaking techniques? What I'm saying now probably, sounds very similar to what my character's MO is in the script, because well, it's kind of a life imitates art thing. But so that was the idea behind it, and I put it together, and I wrote a short film script that was probably about 5 or 10 pages or something like that. And I showed it to my friend Jeffrey, and he said, you should make it into a feature. So I said, okay. So I started fleshing it out, and I don't remember how long it took me, but I wrote a draft of it, and then I'd show it to him, and then he would give me some feedback, and then I would rewrite it, and then he'd give me more feedback, and then I'd rewrite it. And so basically it went through about 8 drafts of a feature script, and I'm going to guess that entire process took about 2.5 or 3 months. So that is how long it took to put the script together. Okay, the next question is, you used an interesting technique, splitting the film into segments that appear as part of evidence from a case. What motivated or inspired the style of the feature? Money. It all comes down to money for me, because I don't have any. So it's a matter of coming up with the most creative way to tell a story, or the most creative things to do that will hopefully engage people's attention and be able to do it with little to no money. So in my first feature film, which was called Summer People, I really enjoyed working on the film, and when I was done with it, I also kind of pasted together a documentary. And when I was looking at the documentary, it kind of seemed to me that, I don't know, I really like the kind of disparity in the performers while they're performing versus when they're not performing, and then they're still being captured on these, documentary cameras, and I just think, I thought, wow, that's kind of really cool the way that there's this difference in their attitudes, and then what if the entire movie was based on the behind the scenes footage? So that's basically my writer's rationale for making the found footage stuff, for turning it into a murder case evidence. Honestly, I don't at the moment remember where that idea came from. It probably just was one of those, after I'm workshopping something for a certain amount of time, it just kind of made sense. Also from that writer's class, or that literature class that I was mentioning before, the idea of using a framework of a story within a story was something that I was interested in exploring. Like at the beginning of Frankenstein, you have the whole Walton's thing, where the story actually starts out as a sea captain, and then he picks up Victor Frankenstein, and then we begin to hear Frankenstein's story. So I guess I figured, hey, if we're going to do something that deals with murder, maybe we should make it into a murder trial, and let's just use the found footage as evidence, pieces of evidence that were used to convict this person of doing these crimes. And well, that seemed a pretty clever idea. I liked it, so I went with it. All right. Next, I have somebody's asking, any crazy stories from the set? Injuries, arrests, things like that. Let's see. I don't believe so much in the way of injuries. Part of the film was shot at a sandpaper factory, or an abrasives factory specifically. They made drill bits too, or Dremel bits and things like that. And it's in a really bad neighborhood. It's in a town called Vernon in California. The factory is actually owned by my cousins. And while we were shooting, somebody walked up to my first assistant director, Sasha, her car, and they smashed the window, and they stole her smartphone or GPS or something. I think it was her GPS. It was before GPSs and smartphones were combined, I think. But anyway, they stole something from hers. And so during our lunch break, everybody was lending a hand and sweeping up the broken glass and commiserating. And, I felt real bad because most of the people that are working on this, on low-budget stuff like this, they don't really get paid. And so when something bad like that happens, it's kind of a really, bummer situation. They're really paying for my art. But other than that, let's see, crazy stories. Well, gotta tell you that from the point of view of a producer or a filmmaker, I have to walk a fine line, because of course I have some crazy stories that I'm probably not going to share for various reasons, but I can say that it was a very, very hectic shoot. There was some bizarre things that wound up happening with scheduling. Due to various circumstances, we actually had to cut a couple of days out of our shooting schedule. So the entire film was more or less shot in 8 days, with the exception of the Lloyd Kaufman scene at the end, which was actually shot about a month prior to the rest of the filming. And also, I probably weighed about 10 pounds more for that because I did. Let's see. Next question is, you mentioned being low budget, but you got Tiffany Shepis and Lloyd Kaufman in for cameos. How are you connected to them? Well, Lloyd Kaufman, actually Lloyd Kaufman and Tiffany Shepis I first kind of bumped into at the same time, which was at a Fangoria convention in Los Angeles. I actually volunteered to work at the convention so that I could get in for free and try to publicize my first feature, Summer People. While I was there, I met Lloyd Kaufman, and Tiffany Shepis was on some panels too. I didn't meet her, but I saw her, and then I kind of discovered her, you know, for my part. But Lloyd, I knew from his work, and I introduced myself to him, and he was very polite and the consummate salesman. You know, he came right out and said, "Hey, if you've got a part for me, I like to help out the little guys with their film work." And that was kind of his MO. And of course, you know, that sounded good to me. So long story short, I was able to negotiate a reasonable fee with him. And with Tiffany, she had actually been the original choice for the lead role of Ashley Swan, and she had agreed to it, but then she had a family conflict, and she had to bow out. But I had already raised some money for the production in order to cover her fee. But as soon as she bowed out, most of that money went back into the production towards other aspects of the production to you know, feed the cast and crew and you know, pay for props and insurance and camera rentals and stuff. But then I basically asked her as a favor, kind of, hey, I still have this one role that I haven't filled, and you know, as a favor, perhaps, maybe because, you know, you had agreed to do the film before, maybe you want to come in and do this for you know, a discount rate. And she was good-humored enough about it, and so I flew her in from her home in I think Tucson, and she came in, she kicked butt on her scene, and that's how I got Tiffany Shepis. And I think there's actually more footage of her being interviewed on the documentary that's on the DVD for this than she actually had screen time in the film. But she was real cool, and it was great to work with both her and Lloyd Kaufman. Next question is, what horror movies and directors inspired you to start making movies? Well, let's see. It's been a long time, and I don't really remember. I can say that, you know, when I was a kid, you know, I liked all the blockbuster stuff, Steven Spielberg films, George Lucas films, all that. Later, when I started to get into horror, George Romero was a big influence. Beyond that, you know, I can talk about when I started getting really serious and snobby and you know, highbrow about art and film, and, you know, started loving people like Terrence Malick and the Coens, Hal Hartley. But you know, as far as, you know, the inspirations that I use when I'm thinking of, you know, my shots or my scripts, it's basically a very organic thing, and it just kind of comes together through my own creative process of workshopping stuff and getting feedback from friends or other filmmakers, and kind of has its own life. So yeah, tell us more about your work, previous films, upcoming projects, etc. All right. Well, when I first came out to California, I made a short film that was actually my dad's idea. It was a really cool short film called The Scratch, and it's basically this kind of revenge tale, and I just didn't really have a clue of what I was doing. I just wrote this script based on his idea, and charged a camera on a credit card, and then got some actors, really good actors actually, and then I just went out and shot the thing. It was pretty crazy. But then as it turned out, you know, I was not prepared to edit it. I didn't have a decent computer, and so basically it stayed in limbo for a long time. Eventually I got it edited, submitted it to some festivals, got an award or two. My second serious project was called Summer People, and that was after I went to film school and had been kind of working around in Hollywood a bit. And it's a pretty cool movie. I'm still pretty proud of it. Much more do-it-yourself than Outtake Reel was. Outtake Reel is really low budget, but this was even lower budget, and I wore a heck of a lot more hats, and it took a whole lot more of my life out of me. But it was a fun project, and it's worth checking out, if for no other reason than just to learn about indie filmmaking at a very grassroots level. Again, extensive behind-the-scenes documentary on that one. You can buy it at Amazon. Then there was Outtake Reel, and then after that, actually last year, I made a really cool, they're all really cool, obviously, short film called Tuning In, Tuning Out, which is kind of my idea of not trying to, you know, play to the numbers or the expectations and just do something that's kind of an artistic statement. Tuning In, Tuning Out is basically my artist's statement on my belief that society is too reliant on popular media for its information, and it's kind of a Kafka-esque surreal tale. And right now, it's on the film festival circuit, and other than that, I've got a bunch of scripts in development right now, but I've also been doing a lot of journalism, horror journalism. So actually, I was the editor of Diabolique magazine for about a year. Now I write for Fangoria and Rue Morgue, Scream, and I actually have my own website called HorrorWorks, which actually I will put the URL in the little question window that you guys are using to ask me questions, in case anybody wants to check it out. What I've got there is basically news that I like to kind of promote activities in the horror community of Los Angeles. There's a lot of stuff going on here, screenings and whatnot, but there's no real hub for the horror community. So I check stuff out, I post updates, and I write articles and take photos of stuff. So it's like my film's pretty cool. Let's see here. Hint, hint, share info about I. I just got Robert, who runs Indie Horror here, is telling me to plug IndieHorrorTV. Watch IndieHorrorTV. And although you're from Michigan and not based in Los Angeles, the main focus of my website is horror activities in the Los Angeles area. So technically, Robert, you don't qualify, but maybe I can, you know, do something for you. Apart from that, I've got an interesting news update. Outtake Reel is now, in addition to being available through Amazon, it's just gotten a distribution deal in the United Kingdom. So Wales, Ireland, Scotland, and England can now watch Outtake Reel as a video on demand through horror, what is it? Horror TV? Horror Show. The Horror Show. That's it. The Horror Show. So if you're in the UK right now and you want to watch a high-definition version of Outtake Reel or download it for your very own personal usage, you can. What else can I tell you while I'm waiting for the next question? I like walks on the beach, and If you could remake any movie with an unlimited budget, which would you pick? I'm guessing the question has to do with remaking one of my films, or I don't know if this is if I could go out and take someone else's work and turn it into my own thing. Any film, okay. Gosh, you know, I need a minute to think about this one, so it's hard to think while I'm making music, but I don't know. I don't really think about doing remakes very much. I mean, if I wanted to go for the money, then I would take a great foreign horror film and I would remake it in English. Guillermo del Toro, in an interview from Diabolique magazine, he had mentioned, or I think it was mentioned, that he had said regarding the production of Mama that you know, the original story was, I believe it was a Spanish situation, and the filmmakers that came to him and he was helping them produce it, they were wondering whether they should do it in Spanish or in English, and he said do it in English because otherwise you're just going to have to remake it in English later, or someone else is going to do it and make a whole lot more money than you are. So maybe I'd pick a foreign film. Were there any scenes in your film that you found harder to direct than others? All the ones that I acted in. Basically, the film is basically directed by myself and my friend and partner, Jeffrey. Basically, I guess the idea was, when I wrote the thing, I easily imagined myself acting in it because it's kind of a meta type of situation where, you know, there's aspects of this character that are me. I am making this horror film and I'm dealing with these kind of, you know, snuff elements or whatever. But after having directed Outtake or Summer People and worn all the hats that I had to wear on that, I didn't act in that one, but I was the cinematographer and the lighting guy, and I basically did pretty much everything. I had one assistant who was really cool, Tom Kaufman, but in any case, I wanted to lighten my load, so I invited Jeffrey to come on and kind of help me by directing the scenes that I acted in. The only thing is my background is in acting and studying theater and whatnot, and Jeffrey's much more of a visual kind of guy, so you know, I was really looking forward to being, you know, given some hardcore acting coaching on that stuff. But well, then again, there's only so much you can do with an 8-day shooting schedule. But hardest scenes, obviously the torture scene had some pretty uncomfortable aspects to doing it. You know, when I had our actress Ava tied down to that table, and you know, her clothes are ripped off, and you know, before we were rolling the cameras, or no, after we were rolling the cameras, I went back to my monitor. You know, she stayed tied up to the table or whatever, but I went back to my monitor, and Matt Blute, the cinematographer, he played back the footage, and just watching what I just shot, you know, it made me cringe and made me kind of question, you know, what the hell am I doing? And boy, this is really some disturbing stuff. And did this really come out of my head? So, I mean, that kind of duality existed in that, you know, on the one hand, I'm responsible for it all, and on the other hand, you know, it truly made me very uncomfortable. So, yeah, the torture sequence. Next question is, how do you feel about crowdfunding sources like Kickstarter, Indiegogo, etc., and would you use those for your films? I actually think I tried to use one, or I was toying around with using one for Tuning In, Tuning Out, the short film that I made last year. By the way, I'll post a link to where you can find out some information about it. But I was looking at the different options for that, and basically I was working at such a low budget level that even using those, they take a small percentage of the money that you raise as part of their fee for using their thing. So for my own purposes and my own little limited whole shebang, I found it easier just basically calling up people and letting them know that I needed money badly. So, you know, if I was doing something with a much larger scale, you know, I probably would use one of those things, but I'm such a penny pincher, and again, my films have so far been on such small scales. You know, they've got a various categorizations for budget type films. You know, there's big budget, there's indie budget, there's low budget, there's micro budget, and then there's finally what my films would fall under the category of, and which is no budget, which ironically actually no budget films can go up to, you know, tens of thousands of dollars, but still nobody anybody really considers those even micro budget. And so again, at that level, I really have to kind of be conservative about every penny that I get. So that's my thoughts on those types of fundraising things. Next question is, do you think a dark comedy is a good bridge from going from a mainly comedy director to trying out horror? Sure. I mean, you know, I'm no authority on any of this stuff. I'm just a guy who's doing his own thing. But you know, as far as my take on it is, dark comedy. This requires deep contemplation. Mainly comedy director. Well, I guess, you know, I have to wonder, you know, what is the project? I mean, I've only really produced mostly horror stuff, but I've written a lot of other stuff. I've written musical comedies, for crying out loud. So as far as what I produce, and however that can influence or impact your views on stuff, whatever the story is, that's the inspiration. The genre, you know, whether it's comedy or you know, Western or horror or tragedy or whatever, it's all a function of serving the story. I mean, everything in filmmaking is about storytelling, communicating ideas, and making people feel an experience. So, you know, we as humans are capable of, you know, well, everything you can imagine. So it really depends on, coming from your heart or your mind, what story you want to tell. If you want to tell a dark comedy, then, you know, there's room for doing that. Insofar as whether or not, you know, you feel confident in doing that, I mean, it's really just a matter of following your own vision, or your own faith in your vision. I guess a good way to judge whether or not to proceed is, you know, write the script, and then you know, see if it still speaks to you as much as the original idea that inspired you to begin with. And if it does, then I'd say go with it. There's a question that says, are we being over-zombied now? That's a good question. I actually wrote a zombie script. I think it was, well, now I think we're going on, it was 2 years ago or something like that. And I was able to show it to a couple of studios. And their response at that time was that there's already a glut of zombie films. So, you know, at that time there were probably all the zombie films that are still coming out now in pre-production or just having been greenlit. So As far as the studios are concerned, yes. But then again, what do they know? They, as far as my own opinion, again, it all comes down to the project. I mean, if there's half a dozen really crummy zombie movies that are coming out now, and then I see those, and then I see one good zombie movie, I'm going to forget about all the other ones, and I'm not even going to think that there was a glut or anything like that. I'm just going to say, hey, this is a good movie, and these other ones weren't. So if it's a zombie movie, it's a vampire movie, you know, these things are kind of, you know, going through or have been kind of being hit hardcore, so to speak, for the last few years. And yeah, there's a lot of really lousy ones, but I don't think that necessarily eliminates the potential for the success of a goodly done one, or a well done one, if you want to correct my grammar. Let's see here. You're welcome. Also, quick question, thoughts on The Conjuring? I didn't see it, so I can't comment on that one. I'm sorry. I did pitch one of the magazines I write for to see if they wanted me to cover it and interview the people that were responsible for making it, but they weren't interested. So now that it's become popular, perhaps they should have rethought their response to my pitch. But as far as the movie itself, couldn't say. But what I did see is The World's End, and I'd be delighted to ramble on about that if anybody is interested. While I wait for a response, I'll ramble on about that. The Edgar Wright, Simon Pegg, Nick Frost team can do no wrong in my book. I'm plugged into their unique brand of geek world, have been ever since Spaced, although I didn't watch Spaced when it first came out. I discovered it later. But their stuff is really cool because in addition to hitting all the marks in terms of making a polished and appealing, exciting movie, they also have the very smart inside commentary that they're kind of playing back and forth with their audience and fellow geeks who know all of their references, and so that obviously speaks to those who get them and make them feel warm. Beyond that, they have great commentary in their films, and that's probably what I love most in good horror films is commentary on society. You know, it's one thing to just make a story that has lots of like monsters and gore and weird things happening or whatever, but beyond that, if it's all a metaphor for making a serious and perhaps useful comment on society, then that's really what art is all about, and that's where great art comes from. Tragedy is that a lot of times when people go that route, it doesn't hit all the marketable points, and so they get buried and lost. And that's why the studios mostly focus on garbage. That's like paint by the numbers stuff. And here we go. Oh, next one is what scares me in real life, and could you name some of my favorite horror movies other than my own? Scares me in real life? Not very much. I might go out of my way to try and scare myself by going to horror films or going to haunted houses or horror-related attractions. But really, all I really get out of that stuff is appreciation for the elements of the production. How the haunted house looks, the design, the neat colors, prop pieces, stuff like that. There aren't too many films that really unnerve me or scare me. I don't have any phobias per se. I can't give you any of my vulnerabilities. Sorry, but I'm sure I have some. So maybe someone out there can help me find them. Beyond that, my own favorite horror movies. The Last Man on Earth with Vincent Price is one of the top ones. Written by Richard Matheson, of course, and was remade later as The Omega Man, and then much later as I Am Legend, which was the original title of the short story or the novella. That's a great one, and that, I believe, significantly influenced the creation of George Romero's Night of the Living Dead, which, of course, is up there. And beyond that, I have to subdivide it into different categories, types of horror film. You know, the zany comedy ones, Dead Alive, and Evil Dead 2, and Reanimator, and stuff like that. And then we've got the serious, ones with social and political commentary. And that brings us a little bit back to like the Edgar Wright films, and also something that was just mentioned, Cabin in the Woods, which I think is a great movie, and it's because it hits all the marks as far as, okay, you go there, you see a girl with her shirt off at one point, you see monsters, you see blood, you've got shocking horror effects and sound effects that just kind of, hit you over the head and everything. But at the same time, it also is a comedy. It's satirizing the entire genre and the done-to-death formulas. And then on top of that, it goes to a new level, which at the end, I don't like talking about revealing the end. I'm imagining everybody watching right now has seen the movie, so it probably wouldn't be a spoiler, but if you haven't, spoiler alert, don't listen for like a minute. Basically, there's a big kind of social and political commentary in that film that essentially suggests that the current paradigm on Earth, in other words, the age of man, is basically coming to an end because we are at a place where nothing is new, and we are just basically beating a dead horse, and the things, the routines that we've accepted as standard aspects of our life and our culture, American culture or whatever, are so plastic that it's basically a breeding ground for conformity, mindlessness, and basically it's kind of it's a very sad state of things. I touched on a lot of that in my short film Tuning In, Tuning Out, but insofar as my thoughts on Cabin in the Woods, I think that they did a great job, and they hit all the marks on a number of levels. Next question. Story, one of my favorite horror movies was Original Assault on Precinct 13, not typical horror. That was a fun one too, actually. I believe that's one of the favorite films of my co-director from Outtake Reel, Jeffrey Chaffin. He's a huge John Carpenter fan, and I think he's the one that originally turned me on to that film, as well as Dark Star. Other than just do it, what advice do you have for aspiring filmmakers? Do it just? Well, I guess it depends on what level you're at. I wouldn't necessarily recommend going to film school. I learned a lot there, but at the same time, by just going out and making films and making mistakes, you learn most of your strengths. And that goes also insofar as after the film's all done, if you survive post-production, which is a monster marathon, then you get to see how it's what the response is and what kind of reception you get, how terrible it is, or what the things people like, and that's a learning experience to create your next one. Just from starting from nowhere, I would say watch all of Robert Rodriguez's films and watch all the films with the commentary tracks on and all of his little how-to making of things. he is a really great champion of indie filmmaking, and he gives some really good common sense advice to help you on your way. Beyond that, it really is just kind of think of an idea, go out and do it. There are good books I could recommend. The Guerrilla's Guide to Independent Filmmaking, and oh gosh, I've got a whole library, but read books, watch movies. Those are your tools. Those are your that's your assignment. Aside from any final? Oh, the next question is there any final question for Scott? I can't answer that one. Somebody says reading Rebel Without a Crew right now. That's a great book. That's one of the ones that got me started. Funny stuff too. What I can say about making your own things and doing it well is keep in mind your audience. Think of what they're expecting. You may have your own vision and your story to tell, but there is a disparity between having your own vision and wanting to tell a story and the real world. There are people out there who are expecting, and this is one of the things I learned through trial and error, people expect to see, for example, if you're making a horror film, in the first 5 minutes they want a scare, they want a shock, they want something bloody or gory. Okay, you have to give them that, otherwise they're going to fall asleep, and anybody who's got the power to buy your movie and get you started in your career, your business career, is going to pass it up. So hit the marks. So, I mean, that's kind of counterintuitive to following your own passion, your own vision, your own storytelling style, but at the same time it is a business, it is an industry, and those are some of the things that you should at least keep in mind. I'm guessing that this is about the time where I'm supposed to wrap it up, so I'll start to wrap it up. You should definitely check out all of my work. Buy it. Buy multiple copies of it. They make great Christmas presents. If you go to Amazon, you could buy Outtake Reel. Let me give you a link to where I'm actually selling it through Amazon, and that way the proceeds go directly to a genuine artist. That being said, I actually did get a very small distribution deal, but as it turns out, a lot of people who have their own, who go to these very small distributors get ripped off, and I'm one of them. So buy it from me instead. Here is a link where you could buy Outtake Reel directly from my own little thingy, and beyond that, visit my website. Again, if you scroll up, I posted a link to it. Check out my stuff, and thank you for watching.